everyone. How are you? So I hope you are doing well. So welcome back to cloud computing classes and students. Today we will discuss about the cloud service model or different type of cloud computing services in briefly. So student, I have already given a short introduction of cloud computing services in previous lecture or video. So this section describes various models for cloud computing. So the application in cloud computing are made of different layers. So these are software layer, platform layer and infrastructure layer. So these layers are used to host the distributed application and also used to build the client based on the services needed and the level of services provided by them. So as per Global Information Security Survey PwC 2012, most of these users, means 69%, deployed software as a services, 47% user deployed IAAS service, whereas 33% user deployed platform as a service in cloud models. So the service model are classified into following four and five types. And so first is software as a service, second is platform as a service, third is infrastructure as a service, fourth is hardware as a service, fifth is function as a service, sixth is database as a service, seventh is communication as a service, eighth is monitoring as a service, and anything as a service in cloud computing model. So today we will started to infrastructure as a service model in cloud computing technology. So first question arises, what is information provided by cloud computing services and what is infrastructure as a service? So infrastructure as a service is a way to deliver a cloud computing infrastructure like server, storage, network and operating system. So the customer can access these resources over cloud computing platform, that is internet, as an on-demand services. In IaaS model, you buy complete resource rather than purchasing server, software, data center space or network requirement. IaaS was earlier called as hardware as a service. So the main objective of IaaS is to provide a standard, flexible and virtual environment. IaaS model support for access, monitor and manage the remote infrastructure provided by the cloud computing service provider. So user can use IaaS service based on pay on use basis. So I repeat the definition of IaaS service model. So you can say that the official IaaS definition is as follows: infrastructure as a service provide computing power, memory, storage, networking and related software such as operating system, and database as a cloud service to replace traditional on-premises data center infrastructure. So simplified, that means IaaS is essential virtual server that the customer rents from another company that has a data center. So IaaS promotes access versus ownership. So infrastructure as a service provider can offer access to computing power and complete network structure including firewall, router and security based system, and can freely dispose of this system. So you can choose which infrastructure you want to use, how many server, router, firewall you want to use, and what performance data the various network elements should have. So the rental IaaS resources can be scaled up or down at any time if you want to integrate an additional server or reduce the computing power. So IaaS is a cloud service that gives customer access to an immediately usable, high scalable IT infrastructure over the internet. So strong running and maintaining the hardware is the provider responsibility. The typical cost accounting model for IaaS is the pay per use method, in which customer only pay for what they have used. So infrastructure as a service provider are Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Compute Engine and Rackspace, etc. So some key concept of infrastructure as a services as follows. So first point is cloud busting. Second is multi-tenant computing. So first is cloud busting. So cloud busting means cloud busting in IaaS is possible with the support of software which play an important role for relocation process to the IaaS cloud model. So you can say that cloud busting relate to hybrid cloud. So the idea is that a given application normally runs in a private cloud or a local computing environment. If a situation arises where the application needs additional resource, means computing power, storage, etc., and it can burst into the public cloud and use cloud computing for those additional resources. So second key point is multi-tenancy. So multi-tenancy means when several different cloud customers are accessing the same computing resources, such as when several different companies are storing data on the same physical server. So next topic of IaaS service model is characteristic of infrastructure as a service model. So infrastructure as a service has helped improving the infrastructure for allocation and utilization. So the key characteristic of infrastructure as a services are: first characteristic of IaaS is generally accepted to comply with the following main characteristic. So resources are provided as a services, allow for dynamic scaling and elasticity, has a variable cost, usage based pricing model, so pay per go and pay per use, and has multi-tenant architecture. including multiple users on a single piece of hardware. So, IAAS typically has enterprise grade infrastructure. So next topic is benefit of IAAS layer. So there are various types of key benefit in infrastructure as a service layer. So first is dynamic scaling, second is service level, third is the rental model, fourth is licensing, fifth is metering and cost. So first point is dynamic scaling. So what is dynamic scaling? So this important characteristic of IAAS is called dynamic scaling. Dynamic scaling means you can scale up and scale down your services as per your requirement. So if customer wind up needing more resources than expected, they can get them immediately. So a provider or creator of IAAS typically optimize the environment so that the hardware, the operating system and automation can support a huge number of workload. So second point is service level. Service level means many consumers rent capacity based on an on-demand model with no contract. So in other situation, the consumer sign a contract for a specific amount of storage or computing power. A typical IAAS contract has some level of service guarantee. At the low end, a provider might simply state that the company will do its best to provide a good service. If the consumer are willing to pay a premium price, they might get a mirrored service so that there are almost no change of service interruption. Third point is the rental model. So when companies uses infrastructure as a service model, it's often said that the server, storage or other IT infrastructure component are rented for a fee based on the quantity of resources used and how long they are in use. So for example, so when you purchase a server and storage resources using infrastructure as a service, so you gain immediate virtual access to the resources you need. So this concept of renting is an important element of cloud computing and also provide the foundation for the cost and scalability benefit of the various cloud model. So next point is licensing. So the use of public infrastructure as a service has led to innovation and licensing and payment model for software you want to run in these cloud environment. Note that this licensing is for the software you want to run in your cloud environment, not the license between you and the cloud provider. So for example, some IAAS and software providers have created a bring your own license that is known as BYOL plan. So you have a way to use your software license in both traditional and cloud environment. So next point is metering and cost. So clearly you derive a potential economic benefit by controlling the amount of resources you demand and pay for so that you have just the right match with your requirement to ensure that users are charged for the resources they are request and used by you. So IAAS providers need a consistent and predictable way to measure uses. So this process is called metering. So IAAS providers often use the metering process to change user based on the instances of computing consumed. So the charge for a very small instances may be as little as 2 cents an hour. The hourly fee could increase to $2 for a large resource intensive instances running window. So student, this is a benefit of IAAS layer. So next topic, types of IAAS layer or classification of IAAS layer. So infrastructure as a service can be classified into subclasses. Some of these are given as follows. So first, types of IAAS service, compute as a services. Second is web hosting. Third is storage as a services. Fourth is disaster recovery and backup as a services. Fifth is desktop as a services. And sixth is server as a services. And seventh is networking as a services. So first classification of IAAS layer is compute as a services. So compute as a services means today is one of the most omnipresent IAAS offers is compute as a service. Compute as a service, it provides computing capacity to the system. Compute as a services include server, router, firewall, operating system, access and load balancing on demand basis. So these services can be shared or public, and these services can be include security management, storage management, dedicated customer support and automated patch management. So this is a compute as a services layer. So second is web hosting. So web hosting, as name suggested, website is a very much useful for the marketing and revenue of many organizations. But any loophole in the website, such as website may be down during the peak hour, may affect the business completely. Therefore, many organizations use infrastructure as a service model for hosting of websites. So this ensures that the website can work properly even during peak traffic hour. So third point is storage as a service. So storage as a service means the demand for storage has increased today. So to provide sufficient storage capacity and manage the same are the big job. So the solution for providing and managing the storage is storage as a service. The service provider of storage as a services have the latest storage technologies with virtual infinite storage capacity. So in these services, the administrator can select storage area and transfer the data to various storage space. So add or remove the storage as per your requirement. And next and fourth point is disaster recovery and backup as a services. So this layer or this layer, the user of the cloud computing always expect uninterrupted access to the application and the data. They don't want any reason for the failure of access to the services in any situation, like power failure, system failure or any natural disaster. So to provide the services, such situation including redundancy and automatic failover, so that the downtime should be reduced to zero. So to keep the data secure in case of failure of the system, the data should be stored at a multiple machines or places so that it can be recovered easily. So organization or user can recover data and the application in two ways. So first approach is the application and data resides in the organization premises server and the data backup to the cloud, as well as store the data on their own hardware machine. And the second approach is virtual machine are used to store the data in the cloud. So virtual machine is the best choice in case of emergency to recover the data quickly and completely. So next and fifth point is a desktop as a services. So desktop as a services means infrastructure as a services model create desktop as a service, and it is used mainly for hosting and serving virtual desktops so that as per their user need or organization. So user select the virtual desktop for their application for some specific time period. For new user, desktop as a services offers sufficient desktop environment with appropriate application and storage area. So this service allow the user to access their workspace from anywhere, anytime. So next and sixth point is server as a services. So server as a services means offer the organization sufficient computing power as per user need or organization need. So this computing power is also available at busy time. This model is useful for a project requiring huge computing power for some specific time. So another advantage of this model is organization do not have to take care of IT infrastructure, administrator and the maintenance cost. But security is the major issue in this service. So next and last service model is networking as a service model. So network as a services offer networking related resources to the organization or users on their demand as per their requirement. So this service is demanded by the organization to support their virtual network, and it includes services like firewall, wide area network acceleration and load balancing system. So it can support for quality of service auditing and monitoring of network based services, and it support flexibility, scalability and security model. So there is a no upfront cost involvement for this service. So this is a types of infrastructure as a layer. So last topic of infrastructure as a service is advantage and disadvantage of IAAS service model. So user in IAAS model, so user can dynamically choose a CPU, memory, storage area according to their need. So user can easily access the vast computing power available on infrastructure as a service cloud platform. And disadvantage of IAAS model is infrastructure service platform model is dependent on availability of internet and virtualization services. So thank Thank you very much, students.